Kelly, raise your hand. Kelly did our talk last week. Yes, and it was excellent. It was excellent. It's really great for me when I can get some food for thought myself, because I'm usually the one that's up here, so it's wonderful when we have people who can share their perspective in a way that is powerful and compelling. And your talk was that last week, in becoming the Christ. Now that's something that makes us a little distinct in New Thought, and I know we have some visitors. I hope you're not too taken aback by what we just did. But we believe in New Thought that Jesus was not the great exception, but really the great example of enlightenment and what we could all be. In fact, he himself said, if you believe, then you will do these things and more and more. And I have often wondered what that more would be. I think we may get into that a little bit more during this talk today. But the idea of being the Christ, and that the highest God and the innermost God is one God. We say it, but to say that I could be the Christ, that is my potential, that is my ability, my true being, it kind of gets stuck in your throat. I can't even hardly say it, right? To say that but that is the truth of who we are. And we're here to realize that. That's why we're here on this earth, is to bring that essence and bring that being to life. So yes, we believe that the highest God and the innermost God is one God. And as you look at one another, and as I look at you, we are seeing the face of God in expression. And that's really a beautiful, beautiful thing. Now, it takes us a while to get to that point. Like I said, it still even gets stuck in my throat a little bit to even say that or think, who are you to say you're the Christ, or that any of us is? So Michael Beckwith, many of you may know who that is, he talks about our stages of spiritual development. And in stage 1, and this is where I would say probably 90% of the world is, maybe more, is in this idea of life is happening to me. Right? Life is happening to me. I'm a victim. I have no control. There are a lot of people that feel that there's no rhyme or reason to it. Somehow we just got plopped on this planet, and we're just struggling continually for our survival, being a victim of everything. In stage 2, now this is what happens for those of you who watch The Secret. Remember how eye-opening that was for you when you saw The Secret? And the idea that I can co-create my life with Spirit. Right? Remember they were talking about the catalog, and just go through and pick what you want and use this power of your amazing mind and imagination, and you can have anything. And that is the idea that life happens by me. I'm the one in charge here, right? I get to call the shots. Now, to evolve from that place, let me back up, because to evolve from stage 1 to stage 2, you have to give up blaming and complaining and this idea of being a victim. That's what moves you into the next phase, which is where life is happening by me. And there is yet another level to evolve, right? So to evolve from that place of I'm the one that's in control and I get to call the shots in my life, which is a very empowering thing, mind you. We move through these phases. The next one is to give up that illusion of power and control and move into the next phase, which is life is happening through me. Like the song we just sang, right? Use me, God. Use me for whatever your purpose is. Not my will, but thy will be done. But yet, there is even another phase of evolution. In stage 4, life is happening as me. As me. The highest God and the innermost God is one God, and we come to that understanding and that deep down knowing and awareness of who we really are as the Christ nature, as Christ. It's a beautiful thing. Kelly used this chart last week, and I love this as well. It comes from the work of Dr. David Hawkins, who calibrated different levels of emotion and life views. You see, it's really a scale of consciousness. And as Kelly showed so well last week, at the bottom of this scale is shame and despair. And it's a logarithmic scale. So people move from one level to another and so on. And even what I shared with you, Michael Beckwith's idea, we jump from stage to stage. You may be in a really good place, and then you have an argument with somebody, something happens, and you drop down again and start to feel like the victim, right? We get off track, but we're continually kind of bringing ourselves back to center, bringing ourselves back. So you may see yourself at any place on this scale. You can jump from one place to another in an instant. We had gentlemen at the prison the other day. I teach a class at Marion Correctional. I've got about 25 men that are taking this class, and it's on what I'm going to share today, restorative practices, social emotional learning. And we gave them the assignment together to bring to mind a time when you were in that place of guilt and shame and despair. And as you can imagine, that was pretty easy for most of them to remember. Now the next thing was to think of a place at the way top of the scale where you were in peace, or you were in your joy, you were really feeling like you were in your power. And sitting right there in their seats, they brought that idea to mind and they shared with one another. And at the end of that exercise, one of them raised his hand and he said, I can't even believe it, that I could go from the bottom of that scale, from shame and despair and pain, and in an instant, bring myself to a place of empowerment and peace and joy. With nothing around me changing, I didn't even get out of my seat. It was really quite an awareness. It was really profound, for all of us, because we all have this ability. We can all do this, that we can move within that scale. Now, we tend to resonate, in certain places and communities. If this is your first time seeing this, it's really worth the study. There are multiple books on this, but this is the crux of it right here, is this idea that that we resonate at certain levels of emotion, and that your life view goes with that. But we can change that. We can change it. And life goes from being really painful, where we're having to make things happen, to being in our own power, where we are that Christ nature, and we manifest, and we live in that joy, and we can live in peace, and we can know how to get ourselves back there. And that's what this teaching of Science of Mind, of a lot of this, is what it's about. So, let me go back here. At the very top is enlightenment. It's a little hard maybe to see, but just below enlightenment is peace. And whereas maybe we can't wrap our minds around the idea of being enlightened, can we maybe wrap our minds around being peace? You raise your hand if you can see that, if you can feel that, if you have felt that, if you know that that is possible. So the way of peace, how do we get there? How do we feel that? What is that all about? And this comes from a book by Deepak Chopra. And the title comes from a quote by Mahatma Gandhi, who said that there is no way to peace. Peace is the way. Right? It's an embodiment. It's a way of being. It's who we see and know and show, and how we show up in the world. So here's the quote. The way of peace is based on the same thing that ushered in the way of science. It's a leap in consciousness. A leap in consciousness. He talks in his book, Peace is the Way by Deepak. And he talks about the revolution in science, and how once that happened, people who understood about science and technology and things, they were no longer content to sit by a candle to read your book. Right? Now you know that electricity is here. Who would do that? Right? We're not settling for less than excellent results with our health, like problems of women in childbirth and dying early and things like that. We know that doesn't have to happen anymore. So we hold ourselves now to a higher level, where we're at a different level of understanding. And what he's saying in the book is that's going to happen with peace too. Right? We're seeing all this crazy stuff in the world, wars and all of these conflicts and violence, that there is going to be a switch in consciousness where that becomes like, how did people do that? How could they even have thought of those things? It will be just unfathomable. So it's a leap in consciousness. Wherever or whenever consciousness is ready for a shift, you see ferment and you see turmoil. Are we seeing that? A lot of it, exactly, because the level of consciousness is coming up. And that old paradigm, those old ideas, are not going quietly. So we're in the right place. We are exactly where we need to be, doing exactly what we are here to do. So the principle to keep in mind is that consciousness wants to evolve. Life is continually evolving, whether we want it to or not. It's a whole lot easier, though, if you get on board. Let me just say that. You know, life has a way of doing that to you. When you don't follow along in the way that it is taking you, it will knock you down a couple of pegs and take you there. Yes? Anybody have that experience? Okay. So here's the thing. Anyone who knows how to move consciousness in an evolutionary direction is part of the peace movement. Including those gentlemen at the prison, right? As they're sitting in their seats saying, I can move myself from shame and despair to joy, you are part of the peace movement. Each and every one of us is part of that because we have that knowledge and understanding. Now, it doesn't mean we're great at it. Okay, I'm so grateful to have this place. That was my prayer this morning, that I have this place where I can come and I can plug in and I can be amongst my loved ones and my friends, and they lift me back up when I'm not feeling great, right? When maybe I'm down at the bottom of that scale, you know, if not shame or anger or guilt or any of those places, that I have my people that can help bring me back to center, and I thank you for that. So how do you know you are living the way of peace? And this also comes from this book, from Deepak Chopra. You know you are living the way of peace when your actions harm no one and benefit everyone. There's another way I like to say this. It comes from Mary Morrissey. Some of you are in the Prosperity Plus class. And she talks about being a person of increase. That wherever you go, you leave people better off. You leave situations better off. You leave things vibrating a little bit higher because you were there. I'm a grandma now, you know, so. Yes. One of those days. Simran, I don't know if I'm saying these words right, but these actually come from the Vedic texts. I don't think it's the Bhagavad Gita, but it's the ancient writings of the Hindus. And so you know that you are in the way, not in the way of peace, but you are living the way of peace when you remember your true nature and your reason for being here, right? Why is it that you have all of these amazing gifts? And maybe you don't even recognize those gifts. But that's part of the joy, that's part of the excitement, that's part of the fun of being here on this planet. You know, we come here with all these gifts and all these unique abilities, and you may not recognize it. Other people do. Other people do, hopefully. If they don't, come and hang out with us some more, because we'll point them out for you. And then we use those gifts in the service of our mission and what we're here to do. So if you remember your true nature and you know your purpose for being here, you are already living the way of peace. And the last thing, satsang, I hope I'm saying that right, which means you know and you feel that you are one of the beloved community. Now, they probably didn't say beloved community in the Vedic text, because I think Dr. Martin Luther King said that. But I believe that it's just a good descriptor of what that means, you know, to be in beloved community wherever you go. To know that you can walk in someplace brand new and be the light, and see other human beings as human beings worthy of love and respect and dignity, and that you are one who believes in justice. That's what it means to be part of beloved community. And so I want to share a process and an idea today of how do we make this from this really beautiful kind of theoretical idea to something that we can really see and feel, that's kind of concrete and a little more measurable. Would that be helpful to anyone else? So what I'm going to talk about is a concept that is circle. It's called peace-building circles. Now, those of you who've been coming for a while know that I have been involved in a peace-building initiative, and that we are getting a peace-building center off the ground here in Ocala. And the focus, or the main the main piece of this idea is to be in circle, which people have been doing since there have been people. And this idea of peace-building circles actually comes from not just Native American culture, but also Aboriginal culture. If you think about it, how often you get in a circle, either around the campfire, sitting around a circle at dinner, just sitting up in a circle with friends, right? We do this, it's part of who we are. So it's not anything new. And I've picked up a bunch of books, I'm doing all this reading, here's one on circle processes, and it says the new old approach to peacemaking. And they talk about how it's ancient wisdom and contemporary thought. Does that sound like anything else you've heard? New thought, right? Ancient wisdom, new thought. That's what some people call this movement that we are in. Ancient wisdom, new thought. This is ancient wisdom, new practices or contemporary practices. Again, it's really not new. It's not new. But there is some science now behind it, and it is being used in lots of contemporary ways. So foundational principles of this idea of circle. What does that mean? So circles are based on shared intention, mutual respect, and values associated with being our best selves. Right? So what does that mean? So values associated with being our best selves. When I do a circle, and we do our classes at the prison in circle, and one of the very first things we do is to decide what our values are, what's important for us, what are our agreements, and even in prison, where I don't know what your thoughts are about people who are in prison, maybe thinking they got there because of something that was immoral or whatever it is, but they will say the same thing that everybody else says. What's important? Honesty. What's important? Integrity. What's important? Authenticity. What's important? Communication. What's important? Empathy, compassion. All of these things that reflect our best selves as human beings. So circle is all around those things that help us bring our best selves, those values, that mutual respect and a shared intention. So something like AA, for example, is a circle. And it is around the shared intention of healing people of alcoholism, or if not healing, but people come together in support of one another because of that commonality that they have. So circles are people coming together for a particular purpose or intent. There is a foundational belief in this tradition that everything is connected. Everything is connected. Now I want to read with you a little piece from this book, which comes from, it's a little book of justice and peace building, and there's a bunch of them. They're like $5 a piece, and they're on all different aspects of circle. And so I tell you that because I think it's so interesting what this woman says here, because it sounds like one of us, someone in New Thought, talking about the nature of the universe. And this was, I believe, the Center for Justice and Peace Building is actually part of a Mennonite university. Now, I don't know what Mennonites teach, but listen to this. She says, everything in the universe is connected. This teaching tells us that every action affects everything in the universe, that it's impossible to isolate something, to act on it without affecting everything else. In this worldview, there is no such thing as an objective observer or a detached perspective. Everything is connected. Then she talks about, I think the woman's name is Margaret Wheatley, who explains the quantum view and says, we live in a world where relationship is the key determiner of what is observed. In other words, everything that we see happens or we experience in the context of relationship. Right? You've heard that question, if a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, did it make a noise? Right? So, but if no one was there, so that's basically what it is. Everything happens in relationship to something or someone else. Everything in our world is relationship. So the idea of peace circles and peace building is to be in right relationship. So I think it's just fascinating that she's talking quantum physics in this book. So because everything is connected, we can't just get rid of our problems. She says, as an educator, overhearing a group of people talking about restorative justice, one exclaimed, oh, I get it. It's just like 30 years ago when we threw a bottle out the window and we thought we threw it away. And then the environmental movement taught us that there is no away. Right?
That part.
There is no away. And it's the same thing when it comes to people. Don't throw people away. When we operate under the illusion that we can throw something away, it comes back to poison us in a way that we may not realize because we've assumed that it is gone. Circles hold at their center the importance of recognizing the impact of our behavior on others and acknowledging the interconnectedness of our fates. Harm to one is harm to all. Good for one is good for all. So I think that's fascinating. Everything in the universe is connected, and our actions impact others. I think that's pretty clear. And that we need others. We need others. You know, we live in a country where it's all about rugged individualism, and I do everything, I pull up my own bootstraps and I do for myself. None of us does for ourselves. Nobody. Mary Morrissey tells a joke about the scientist who says, I have it now, I have the secret to life. And he gets into a showdown with God, and he says, I'm going to show you. God says, go for it. And he grabs a bit of dirt. God says, you got to bring your own. Right? We have all the raw materials. Everything we have is right here, right now. We've been given it. We've been given it. So while you may think, I did it all myself, you came into something that was already well established, right? None of us is an island. We need others. So each person has each person has inherent dignity and worth. Therefore, we honor the gifts, knowledge, talents, experiences, and voices of all equally. So in circle, we sit in circle. And there's a reason for that, because in the circle, there's no hierarchy. Every person's voice is important. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how young you are. It doesn't matter what you've done or what you haven't done in your life. Everyone in the circle is equal. Just like in AA. People use their first names, right? You don't know anything about them other than they have this commonality with you of this situation with alcohol. So anyway, whatever your circle happens to be, we appreciate and we honor everyone's voice. The next thing, we acknowledge that there are mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual aspects to the human experience. All of those things are important and all of them are addressed in circle. So there are different aspects of circle that speak to the different parts of us. You know, of our emotional self, of our physical self, of the spiritual. And ultimately what circle is to do is to restore wholeness. Right? That's another part of the symbolism of a circle. The circles represent wholeness. Right? If there's no beginning and no end in the circle, it already has everything it needs. We cultivate mutual support and a sense of community. That seems like pretty easy to see. And it creates deep space for listening and being heard. That's probably the deepest thing about circle, is that circle requires that you be present. You know what it means to be present? So when you're present, okay, let me say when you may not be present, like your body is someplace, but your mind is somewhere else. Does that ever happen to somebody? That's not being present, right? The lights are on, but nobody's home. Have you ever talked to somebody and you know they're not present? You know they're not with you? What does that do to the communication? It shuts it down. If you can even have communication. It's not communication, in fact, right? So in circle, people are present and they're there in the moment, not thinking about yesterday or tomorrow or whatever, but being here for one another in that moment. And it's really important, because what happens to you when you know you have someone that's listening for you? Right? People are nodding their heads. You feel better, right? You feel better. And when you're talking to someone, you know they're not listening, it shuts down communication, it's aggravating, it's hurtful. Anybody else get frustrated? And then the opposite is true, right? How many times do you have someone that you call them and you're crying or you're telling their whole thing, maybe they didn't even say anything. If you got a really good listener, you can get all your stuff out and feel so much better. Right? It happens to all the time. People call me and they go, oh, I feel so much better. Well, I didn't really say anything. I did, it creates the space for people to go through whatever it is that they're going through. The turmoil, the pain, the anger, the whatever. That's what circle does. It creates the space for people to move through their situations. And because of that, it facilitates our growth and healing. Right? Being in circle is such a healing, beautiful thing. Every week that I'm out there with those guys, there's somebody who says, you all need to be teaching this in the schools. Why aren't we doing this all over the country? If I'd only learned these ideas when I was a kid, I wouldn't be sitting here today. That's what they tell you. So peace-building circles. It's a process, it provides a process and a structure for facilitating relationship through conversations. That's the bottom line of what it is. And by structure, it's very loose. It means people sit in a circle, but we have ground rules, and there may be a little bit of ceremony to it, and one person speaks at a time, and there's maybe a talking piece. So there's different aspects of it that make it structured. But within that structure, we then have the freedom to explore ourselves and what it is that our common intention. So circles are useful when there are decisions to be made, when you want to have some kind of teamwork, when there is need to share some kind of sorrow or joy. It's both things. It's both things. We need to be connected. Think about when something really terrible happens to you, what's your first instinct? Is to pick up the phone and call somebody, like call your honey, right? Call somebody who's going to help you feel better. How about when something great's happening? You want to call somebody, right? You want to call somebody. So either way, whether it's good or whether it's bad, our first instinct as human beings is always to reach out and connect. So when there is need to share that sorrow, those sorrows or joys, we can be in circle. When there is a desire to learn from other people, right? When I want to hear your perspective, there are circles that are happening now around the racial divide, where we bring people of different ethnicities, and Caucasians and black folks and brown folks, and bringing them together so that we can come to greater understanding of one another. It's another aspect of circle, and another way that could be used. When there is conflict or disagreement, right? There are circles that are done between police officers and youth, between kids and their teachers. There's all kinds of ways this stuff is being used right now. And then when an experience results in harm to another person. So that could be anything from a kid on the playground, that feels disrespected. In fact, one of those books tells a story of a child coming and running to his teacher and saying, so-and-so, Mary feels really disrespected, we need to have a circle. And the teacher pulls out a little plastic dinosaur from her pocket and gives it to the kid. That's their talking piece. And they run off and they host their own circle. Right? So the kids understand these ideas, right? Of we need to speak together. Avoiding conflict causes more problem. This is for the kids to understand that if you want to resolve conflict, we need to lean into it. That's a whole other aspect of peace building. But specifically with these circles when harm has been done, we call those restorative circles. It's to bring people back to that sense of peace and wholeness, and restoring relationship, restoring their own sense of who they are, but also restoring the relationship with others. So I'll give you an example. We had a young man. Now this is a very structured circle called a restorative justice circle. And these are done in the criminal justice system. Sometimes they're done to keep someone from going into the system as kind of a pre-trial diversion thing. Sometimes it's done when they are at the end of serving their sentence and are getting ready to reintegrate into society. Sometimes it's just done to facilitate healing. Somebody has something they need to get off their chest, they want to make amends. The thing with circle is that everyone has to be agreeable to it. And people have to know kind of the ground rules and the purpose of it. There's not circles so that one person can hammer another one and punish them more. That's never the reason for having a circle. Circles are to restore. So we had a gentleman, we just did a training, 2-day workshop on restorative circles in schools and also criminal justice system. And this young man came to talk about his experience being the person who had committed the crime. He was about 22 years old, I think he's like my son's age, a student at the University of Florida, and he had a moment of weakness. He really didn't get into the crime itself, but he did agree to be part of a circle. So my understanding of what happened was that there was some kind of affair or something going on, and he put on a ski mask and he snatched some money and he took off. And he got caught. And he did some time behind bars, not a whole lot, but he was very agreeable to this process. He knew as soon as he did it, it was a horrible thing to do. So it was referred to our office at the River Phoenix Center, the Peace Building, and the victims were agreeable to doing the circle. So we got all the parties together, and I'm hearing this from him. Okay, I was not there. Just to clarify that. So he talked about the terror for him in having to face the people that he had harmed. Can you imagine that you've done something like that? Has anyone ever done something that they regret? Something that they're embarrassed about? Something they wish they hadn't done? A way that they hurt people? Right. So he agreed to doing the circle. He was terrified. He's sitting there and with his head down, and the people sitting across from him, I believe they were the Hare Krishnas. But anyway, one of the ladies took out a bag of homemade chocolates and set it on the table and said, "This is for you. Right? We're all here for you, for your benefit." And he said the waterworks just started with tears, just instant regret, remorse. And it was a beautiful experience for him. It was really a beautiful experience. He's able to continue on with school. This is not something that's going to be on his record forever, I hope, I believe. But certainly he has learned a lesson. As well as the people who offered him that gift, that healing, that listening, they got to understand what was going on for him when that incident happened, what was going on behind that. So here are the questions, and I want to leave you with this because it's really so simple. And you can use this in your home if there's an issue that comes up with your family, as comes up with any family, in your workplace, in any of your relationships. 4 questions is all it is. Number 1, what happened? So we bring people together in circle and we give everyone an opportunity to speak about what happened from their perspective, uninterrupted. The next thing, what was the impact of what happened? So what was the fallout for you? Right? How did it make you feel? What happened to you as a result? And people can all speak to that. The next thing, how can we make amends? Can we make amends? Sometimes you can't. Sometimes somebody is dead out of a situation. You can't bring people, we can't. I'm not to that level yet, right? Of bringing people back to life. But there may be other ways that there can be understanding and amends made when there have been even terrible tragedies and hurt. And then the last thing, how do we prevent it from happening again? And each person, as I said, gets to speak of the different aspects of these 4 questions. And it is incredible, the healing potential of this movement, of something, again, that is so very simple to do. I am about out of time, so I can't tell you how it's used in the criminal justice system, but if you are interested in this, please talk to me, because we are on the ground level of what we're doing with our peace-building circles, and right now are doing essentially a needs assessment of our community to see if any aspects of this work are being done here already, where the greatest need is, and where we can fit our gifts and our talents and our vision along with what is needed in our community. So that's where we're at with the peace-building circles. And even if you don't get involved, I just request that you hold us in prayer. Keep us in that high consciousness, because I truly believe that this is our bridge, I think, as New Thought communities. This is something that we can do because we understand the underlying principles of connection and everyone's inherent worth. And we're not trying to save people, right? There's no attachments to this, right? There's no hidden agenda. It is truly, purely about restoring people and returning wholeness in relationship. So, quote by Deepak Chopra, also from this same book, The Way of Peace. No one knows what the critical mass must be before peace becomes the foundation of a new order. Your duty and mine is to bring about change by personal transformation. Right? So we know that just like the idea of the 100th monkey, right? When something is brand new and it's just starting, it takes a little while to get off the ground. It takes some time to get going. But then at a point, things hit a critical mass and it totally flips into the next level. And that is where we are right now. We're approaching a critical mass in our evolution as humanity, moving out of that place of victimhood and despair into understanding, right, that we are the creators, right? That we are co-creating with all of this magnificent energy and all of the raw materials that we have right here, right now. We are exactly where we need to be, doing the work that we came here to do. And so that leads me to the affirmation.